management team member. Asian Investors Consortium of Asia invests in projects in Greater China and in Asia Pacific. Henry is also a senior advisor to China Plus Capital Limited of Shanghai, a company that focuses on bridging US-China business. Mr. Henry Yu is a seasoned banker of about 35 years, and he has had excellent banking career covering domestic and global lending, investment banking, credit administration, and compliance, trade finance and international banking, treasury management, global bank relationship management, and global supply chain. And Henry has been in the Atlanta for a long time, and he knows a lot of people, and a lot of people know him. So he needs no introduction. Here is Mr. Henry Yu, my friend and advisor.
Thank you, May. In honor to be here today, this afternoon, certainly a very distinguished panel of speakers that I am happy to be part of it. I had a pretty easy job because they will be doing all the talking. I will just moderate the interactive Q&A. Certainly, it's a great day to be here, and I will just jump right into it because I think I will do no commercial. But I think the connectivity is that the fund is from Asia. We invest in projects in Asia, in clean, green tech, hospital, healthcare, culture and education, and mostly the first phase is going to involve Greater China companies and also branching out and expanding into Southeast Asia. Second phase is to bring those Asian private investors to invest in USA. With that, you know, this is a big topic, really, new initiatives in Asia Pacific. It could be politics because there are a number of elections that has happened in Southeast Asia, Laos, Vietnam, I think Philippines and coming up, and certainly you heard about TPP, which I'm sure that one of the distinguished speakers is going to touch upon, TPP and trade, and certainly and also other free trade agreements that the earliest panel speakers has discussed. And also, people heard about AIIB and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and certainly since this is a partnership symposium, I think I would be remiss if I don't mention that I'm seeing even cooperation between AIIB and World Bank and Asian Development Bank. And I'm going to make a prediction that within the next 2 years, one of the first few projects is going to be a jointly financed by AIIB and one of the other banks. So this is good news, certainly, and I guess that's my prediction. Again, I don't bet on it. So based on all this initiative, and then I would be remiss if I did not mention, you know, China is getting a lot of attention, but I want to make sure that since this is an Asia-Pacific forum, a rising China is going to have heavy influence economically in Asia, but Japan has been investing in Southeast Asia and Asia for many years. So Japan will be a force in terms of working cooperatively and competitively with China to really compete for some of the projects in infrastructure, One Belt, One Road, building high-speed rails. But more importantly, I think Japan will probably be very interested in some of the ASEAN economies. As a matter of fact, one of the initiatives is the Japan participated Made in ASEAN initiative, which I think is healthy because competition will bring about better pricing for consumer. And also, I think China can learn a lot from competing with Japan and certainly rising India and from the West too, in terms of how to be a good global, I guess, country citizen, cooperate and competing with global powers and from business standpoint. So this is healthy. Creating more corporate governance and transparency. So with that, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, certainly good friend of mine that I've met maybe 8-9 months ago in Atlanta. He's a seasoned professional, having done a lot of global business through his company, SoZo Group. Raymond has been involved in economic development advisory, doing a lot of US-China bridge. It's more than just business, also cultural aspect of it. But more importantly, he's because of his activities in promoting business as well as culture, he is an honorary citizen of the state of Alabama. And certainly, I would just also mention that Raymond is going to be, I guess, making his presentation, I think jointly and individually and separately with his friend, Honorable Mayor Ponder of Donaisonville, Georgia. Glad to have you, and I believe Ray will obviously it makes sense for Ray to introduce his friend. So with that, I also want to mention that Ray has been very active in volunteer service, a lot of volunteer time on NGOs, as well as some of the nonprofit charity, and you name it. He also really spent a lot of time working closely with several of the global companies, and obviously Huawei is a company that he's very proud of to be affiliated with, I guess, from a business perspective, working jointly to really for common goal. So with that, I will leave it up to Raymond to touch upon building an authentic partnership, which is very what we are all about today. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. I'm going to take a slightly different tack, and with the permission of Patrick, so he won't whack me. After he's just spoken to Ambassador Vinay earlier. I have been a keynote, and I've been a speaker for Select USA, so usually actually, you know, with Patrick's help, we'll talk about Select USA, we'll talk about TPP and so forth. But when May invited us to speak on a subject called New Initiative, I was thinking, you know, how interesting if we talk about some of the human level. One of the students asked about, what about human to human? So I thought, well, I think one of the most important initiatives that is being launched in both sides now are human to human. Let me explain to you how I qualify to speak about this, and I'll lead you to a 1 or 2 minute journey of my life. You know what that means? I learned the attitude to be gasu, and yet I forgot all the Chinese I learned in Taiwan. Then I went to my undergrad in Canada, where I learned to speak English all over again. I actually learned how to speak Mandarin at age 55. I worked for many global giants, HP, Compaq, Apple, Borland, and while I was at HP, we were the first technology team being sent into China. So all my job has taken me, for some reason, because I'm Chinese, they always send me back to Asia. From Silicon Valley to Sydney, Australia, I was based in Hong Kong to Singapore, and then 4 years later, I went from Malaysia. Microsoft bought my company, went back to Seattle. During all this time, I watched the phenomenal growth of Asian Tiger. I saw the Asian crisis, and I experienced the China miracle. I started SoZo because, you know, getting old, I wanted to do something meaningful. I wanted to go back to China to help, also to capitalize on the China FDI phenomenon that's going on. I wanted, and my shareholder wanted, to create a company that has a soul, and to give corporate social responsibility program to these companies. Our effort then turned into a consultancy, which is what we are quite well known for, bringing Chinese investment into the U.S. Our journey has been fascinating, you know, through spectacular success and a number of very frustrating failures. Although we led some of the best top greenfield investment in the U.S., it's been rather frustrating sometimes. We delivered 3 large U.S.-China symposiums. They're about 700 people each, and I see some faces here that attended those symposiums. I wrote the Made in Alabama law, passed it in 7 legislative days, and so forth. Through all these frustrations, several best minds has recommended that, Ray, you really need to bring in the best. There are good global companies in China that not cutting corners, and you won't be so frustrated and pull your hair out. So that basically how we focus on our effort the last 2 years. We started consulting for Huawei, and while on this journey, we discovered a hidden gem. We were very, very frustrated and say, well, some people look at Chinese companies as bag of cash. We look at Chinese companies to invest here to build bridges, to build what we talk about, authentic partnerships. But getting these Chinese companies to use, some of the friends in the audience today, use the right advisor, follow the right process, use the right CPA. I've seen quite a few of them there. It's frustrating. A lot of them want to cut corners, and Wall Street Journal has various articles on our effort to say, despite the fact we're bringing in hundreds of millions, created lots of jobs, and a lot of those are not happy endings. Not that type of happy endings. But however, by bringing in some of the best companies, we're starting to transform that. By focusing in the rural areas of America, we found our calling. We discovered these communities are most welcoming. They're underserved, but they're hospitable, and they treat us well. So we start transforming ourselves, and we start transforming these communities together. Last year, we formed a joint venture with Huawei. We became the only what they call value-added partner in the United States. For lack of a better contract, we copied what was done in Germany. That became the last chapter, the latest chapter of SoZo. The jigsaw puzzle of what we're trying to do and trying to make impact is coming together. And this afternoon, due to the time limit, let me very quickly share with you our thoughts, and let me quickly share with you what we're trying to do. First, I first apologize, Patrick. Our view is the government's initiatives are very, very important. But what we're talking about is not about TPP, is not about One Belt, One Road, is not about AIB, none of that acronym stuff. We're talking about authentic partnership on a people-to-people level, corporate to community level. Yes, all of these initiatives we support, especially TPP, somehow with One Belt, One Road, they are all important. They form the underlying infrastructure for companies to have a rule base, to have a system to trade, to invest, and so forth. But having that in place, you still need authentic partnership to succeed. So my humble opinion, the social impact that we really need to come from a people-to-people level. And in my humble opinion, the global forces that is currently driving change, both good and bad, is happening so fast and thousands of times bigger than all previous industrial or economic revolution. These forces are discussed earlier this morning. For example, what we call extreme automation and artificial intelligence. Extreme automation is not just robotics. Think about when you call the airline, the machine that talks to you, that's automation. Think about you going to the bank now, you hardly ever have to deal with a teller. Think about everything around us being automated. And think about the jobs being displaced, especially with the latest round of AI. When AlphaGo won the Go game, everybody is saying, wow, it's cool, it's science fiction. It's not. With artificial intelligence as powerful as that, things are beginning to change. The other forces are ubiquitous connectivity. The mayor then keep laughing at me about ubiquitous. Think about connectivity. Think about going to dinner now that you really have to collect all the smartphones, because I see people talking to each other WeChat across the table. Think about this type of connectivity that's currently connecting trade, people, security, data, and yet we forgot something. Where's Sandeep? Oh, think about India, for example. They got more smartphones than toilets. Guys, what's wrong with that picture? So having ubiquitous connectivity doesn't mean it's all good. We have an aging population, and then last force is urbanization and what I call now the rise of rural community. And finally, the ultimate force that given the time that I have today, I want to briefly discuss is authentic partnership. Authentic partnership will transform and deliver the social impact. It's not an easy road, it's not a walk in the park. And from innovative company to community, from committed individuals to each other, we need authentic partnership to do a number of things. First, in my opinion, education is key. Education on all levels. We need to educate and educate and educate. I don't hear much, both in China, Asia, and in the United States, to talk about workforce retraining. There is talks about that, but that's not fast enough. And I still walk into Education Institute or vocational training and talk about welders. Are there going to be any welders around in the next 2 years? I bet you not. Robotics is going to replace and displace hundreds of millions of low-cost workers. The jobs that politicians in this silly season talk about is not coming back. Why? Because China is now automating faster than anybody else. They're investing in robots bigger than anything else. So the end result is we're going to have social unrest and a wider gap in inequality. I have 2 minutes left. Avoid stereotyping. So many analysts that's writing report today are like weathermen. They talk about China economy, they talk about US economy, and they're writing conclusions. They should talk to Patrick first. How many of them have ever even visited China? So authentic partnership really need right time, right place, right people. In the art of war, Chinese had an old saying, say, right time, right place, right people. 天时地利人和. And the last bit is the most important, having the right people committed to do this. I have many, many examples. You'll hear George Laniger invest millions to bring To Kill a Mockingbird to Hong Kong because he's in love with that community. Ronnie Chan, who has invested hundreds of millions restoring historic sites in China, and yet, because we have a US-China symposium to talk about relationship, he flew 40 hours to come over here. Now the role that Huawei, which there's no free lunch, we sponsored this because we want to tell you some of the things we do. From a corporate level, Huawei has a soul, and we invested very heavily connecting rural America. We also understand from a technology standpoint, having connectivity doesn't mean anything. So what if everybody has free Wi-Fi? So what if everybody is connected? That's just connection. We want to create social impact. So you'll hear from a very distinguished friend of ours later in 1 minute that will talk about creating social impact in the rural part of America. And also talk about partnership. In the innovation panel this morning, you had IBM and Infosys. Let it be known that Huawei invests $45 billion in the last 10 years in R&D. But also, we have paid IBM $300 million a year to do business transformation. And we are one of the largest customers of Infosys and partner now doing new gas experience, smart rural communities, and so forth. Obviously, there's many, many more companies I can talk about. I can talk about Kennesaw and University of South Alabama, who's now investing heavily providing content. But given the time, I think you probably want to hear more from more distinguished speakers. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce a good friend. I dare to call him a friend now. We traveled in China for the last 10 days without having one fight or kill each other. He ate everything I presented to him. Yeah. The Honorable Mayor Dan Ponder is the mayor of a city called Donaisonville. In about 2 months, it's the most connected and hopefully the most transformed community within the next 1 or 2 years. He has been a former state legislator. While he was a state legislator, he did something so heroic that he received the Profile and Courage Award. He was the number 16 Profile and Courage Award winner recipient from the JFK Foundation. That particular award is only given to elected officials who deliver something while in office or post office that is so heroic in the face of political challenge, in the face of personal challenge, or even challenge to their job. So let me have a very warm welcome for Dan Ponder.
We are friends, but I'm not going to drink his water. It is a pleasure for me to be here today. I'm probably the most unusual or different speaker that you will hear today from all these distinguished guests here and earlier. But I want to tell you a little bit about what I've learned with the Asian and American partnerships, and in particular how that is applied to my job as mayor of Donaisonville, which for those of you who don't know, and I suspect that's a pretty large group of people in this room today, is a small city in the very southwestern corner of the state. It's 9 miles from Florida, 9 miles from Alabama, about 220 miles from here, unless you want to get on the Chattahoochee River and you can float down. But I want to talk about Donaisonville, a little bit about just my time in the Georgia House of Representatives, also the way I view the relationship both as a successful entrepreneur and actually as a board member of a company that's expanding in China right now. I've received some really good advice in my early days of these discussions, particularly in my case with the Chinese, but by extension all of the people of Asia, and that is that it's all about relationships. Most of the significant events in my business life have been built on relationships, not really on spreadsheets or contracts, as important as they may be. The second piece of information or advice that I got was to, above all, always be authentic, which is a common word that you've heard Ray and me both speak of. Just be yourself and build your relationships authentically, get to know everything you can about prospective companies that you want to deal with and about their culture. Let them see your own genuine interest. Let them understand what your motives are, and let them be aware of your goals. So just yesterday, I returned from a 10-day trip to China. I got to bed about 10 or 15 minutes till 3 last night. And so if I mispronounce any words, you'll know why. So while the official purpose of the meeting was actually to solicit business for Georgia in general, but in particularly small towns in southwest Georgia, the underlying goal of the visit really was to simply build on some relationships that are critical for our long-term mutual success. So you might ask, is it really possible for a mayor of a small rural city in Georgia to meet with a mayor of a city in China that's twice the size of the city of Atlanta? And do we really have any mutual interest? As our trip to the city of Dalian proves, the answer was a resounding yes when it's just wrapped in the cloak of relationship building between open and authentic people. Imagine a city of 3,000 people working to become a sister city to a city of 11 million people. And that's all about relationships. So while we know that there are always economic considerations that drive both private and public decisions regarding these type of investments, regardless of which way they're going, I'm particularly aware of the cultural differences that may exist, particularly in rural America. So are these differences as great as they seem? Can we trust the data that we receive without looking our counterpart in the eye while shaking his hand? And I would submit that no, we can't. We always need to look that person in the eye and to shake their hand. So the high point of my trip, though, for 10 days may have actually been a visit to an elementary school. These were children in grades 1 through 6, same age as my own grandchildren. They were delightful, they were energetic, they were talented, they were inquisitive. They shared their talents and their gifts, some confidently, some shyly, just like if the roles were reversed. And they conveyed the truth that we all know, that children are the same the entire world over. In a pilot program, the city of Donaisonville will soon hopefully lay claim to being the most connected rural city in America. And through the efforts of both Huawei and SoZo Solutions, we've identified other partners, and perhaps some partners in this room, from around the world that will not only help in this transformation, but will make these improvements and changes sustainable, which is what we all desire for the foreseeable future. So our initial plan was to provide, as Ray would say, ubiquitous internet service to every citizen for free. That's actually evolved, as he mentioned, into a goal of providing free service to people who are more marginalized, which there are plenty of in rural America. These might include a person who didn't graduate from high school, but he can attend GED classes and he gets free internet. It would provide for free internet for someone who is functionally illiterate, so they take adult literacy classes. It would provide for free internet to any young single parent if they would take the free parenting classes, and you can go on and go on. It would also provide for free internet to people who can really afford to pay for it themselves if they simply mentor young people in our community who need someone of their stature to help them through life. So the goal really isn't about faster internet. It's about providing content, it's about providing programs, and it's about providing applications that address some of the core societal issues that face rural America, which obviously include poverty, and they include education. But at the same time, we want to attract jobs to an area, to a rural area, that is focused on state-of-the-art technology. In March, our community hosted Net Days. It was a 2-day test to attempt to validate our project, a proof of concept, if you will. Interactive learning was provided by the world-renowned photographer J.J. LaRue, who discussed her book of photographs of penguins in Antarctica with a 5th grade class. And the kids are sitting there in the class and they all have the books. And they're talking to the person who actually took the incredible photos of these penguins and other things there in Antarctica. The thing was, she was in Venice Beach, and they were in Donaisonville, Georgia. And the technology was so good that she could see them in the classroom and would point out to the young boy in the back row who raised his hand. And the interaction between them, it's not the same as if you're standing there, but it's so doggone close. And when you think about what that means to rural America and to their limitations on education, you can see why people like me would get excited. Other events during the 2-day demonstration, one of them in particular was an amazing concert that featured musicians from the University of South Alabama and musicians on the stage in the Olive Theater in Donaisonville. We had jazz musicians in both locations jamming real time. We had 2 renowned classical pianists playing forehand piano duets in real time against each other via telepresence versus being powered by high-speed internet. It was incredibly startling for somebody who's not a technical whiz, but who understands the beauty of incredible music. And this was done 400 miles apart. So imagine that kind of technology and what it can do to open up cultural and educational opportunities for a rural community. Just this past week, Tony Busick, who is here, he's a city councilman, but he also conducts a children's choir in our elementary school system. And he's at Huawei's headquarters in China while he's conducting real-time the children's choir in Donaisonville. That's transformational for an isolated rural community. We also had Dr. Jeanette Fresney from University of South Alabama, who is also conducting exercises with the children, math exercises across a 12-hour time difference, real time. So, you know, it's just incredible stuff. Plans are underway for that same choir to visit Dalian and to perform in their incredible $1.6 billion performance center there. At the same time, there are plans underway for 30 of these children from Dalian to visit Donaisonville and become immersed in our small town for a little while. In the end, they really speak the same language there, and that's simply this music. It all started with a chance meeting through a mutual friend between Ray and I. Random encounters gave way to meetings, dinners, long discussions about what if and why not. And those discussions continue today. And as a result of those efforts, the most improbable thing is happening. Transformation has begun in the city of Donaisonville before the first high-speed internet line even went hot. The power of hope, which is what we like to call the project, is alive and is contagious in this community, and has led to discussions in areas that we couldn't have even imagined just a few months ago. So this was my first visit to China, and I found myself constantly reminded just how much the globalization of our economic world has caused our cultures to become more similar. A visit to a small or to a mall in Shanghai is not much different than a mall here in Atlanta. Teenagers are all walking around with their cell phones in their hand. They're just glued to them, and that's true no matter what part of the world they're located in. I actually own quite a few Hardee's restaurants, and our sister company is Carl's Jr. Restaurants, if you're familiar with them on the West Coast. So I visited some of those in Shanghai. They're the same as if they were in California. I learned things from our Chinese partners that afternoon that I couldn't have learned here. And I learned the same every time I visit an operator outside of this country. And there are 45 countries that CKE Restaurants now operates in. Likewise, I gained invaluable insight into the world's second largest economy. I saw upcoming technological advances that will help my company, my own company, help my city, my family. I left thinking that we just have so much to learn from each other in almost every imaginable way. As a mayor of a small city, I'm convinced that we must reinvent ourselves to be relevant in this fast-changing world. If we succeed, then we survive. If we drift along, as most of rural America has done for so long, and we refuse to embrace the inevitable, then we will wither on the vine. The stereotypes of generations can be broken down over a cup of tea. How amazing that is. The building of trust breaks down barriers that separate us. Through trips such as my travel to China, our city and our potential partners can really develop sustainable projects that will be successful for both of us. The transformation started with just a seed, but it can grow into unimagined success. I returned home confident that the relationships with our new partners and our friends will continue to grow and flourish if we follow up and if we jointly remain committed to our mutual goals. We need these companies and these partnerships to help transform our community. But I realize that they need our assistance in refining and developing this project that will actually fit rural America, which is a huge source of potential labor as well as just an enormous underserved market in this country. If the city of Donaisonville, because of its location or its size, or any other factor isn't a good place for you to invest, then we will assist you in any way we can to make sure that you see the right fit here in the state of Georgia and not then the American South. But I'd encourage you, those of you here who are investors looking to invest in this country, to capitalize on the joint opportunities between Asia and America, then look at rural America and examine the rural South. Look at, in particular, those communities that are taking action to embrace the new economic realities and that are working to make their cities as connected as anywhere here in this country. The friendly people of Donaisonville are eager for economic development. They're proud to live in a place where there is fresh water and clean air. And after my last day in Beijing, I can appreciate the difference between the air in Donaisonville and that city. They work hard, they are working hard right now to improve the quality of life as measured by the potential employees that you are most interested in having work for your company. It's all a bit mind-boggling. A group of leaders working through their partners to transform a really small city in Southwest Georgia. It's a most unusual scenario that can bring groundbreaking results and can open up the doors for literally thousands of rural communities around this country and around the world. The right people, the right place, the right time. Sometimes it's just that simple. Check us out and see what you think. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, congratulations on establishing the sister city relationship. Well done. And I'm sure there will be economic benefit that will follow. I'm pretty sure. Our next speaker